Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to the final talk on the schedule for NarraScope 2025. My name is Alex. Again, thank you, fellow Alexes. And I'm from Shark and Pelican Games, which I run with my partner Ethan. Today, I feel honored to have the space to talk to you all about kissing. Welcome to How to Craft Kissable Characters, whether your game has romance in it or not. Before we get started, just a quick disclaimer that all characters are kissable. Just like every Pokemon is somebody's favorite Pokemon except Spearow, every character is kissable, even if they don't have lips. However, we're all artists and scholars here. Just because every character reflects the beauty of its creator and is therefore inherently kissable, doesn't mean we should be content with that knowledge. Does a pastry chef give up on baking a delicious apple tart just because an apple is also delicious? No. And neither should we, so let's get into it. Crafting kissable characters! Let's start with why should you listen to me? First of all, you should listen to me because I love talking about this, and who better to talk about passion than someone who's passionate about passion? Thank you. Thank you. Secondly, I've spent my life loving fictional characters and kissing them in my head. Honestly, and arguably most of interest to this audience, I've made games about kissing. Bard Harder, which you saw a screenshot of earlier, is a tabletop-inspired visual novel about kissing the big bad evil guy. The conceit is that you are a bard in the game Wizards and Wyverns, or not D&D, but you've put all of your stats into charisma and you don't have a lot of combat prowess, so when all of your party members gets captured, the only way to get them back is by flirting with the undead Lich King. And while kissability in this case is more of a given because kissing is a means to an end, we still worked really hard to make said Lich King Balcazar kissable, and we got results. Our next game, Kiss Off, is an intergalactic dating sim where you're abducted by a love-obsessed alien and forced to participate in a dating show where you have to have the most romantic kiss at the end of 3 dates or you die. So needless to say, kissability was a big factor, specifically because this is one of those games where you have to play all 3 characters' routes to get to the actual story. So we really wanted to make sure players didn't just kiss their fave and then dip out. So each of the 3 romanceable characters had 5 different endings based on how well the final kiss goes. So that's 15 different kisses or misses based on how well you do, which even by dating sim standards is a respectable amount of kissing. Lastly, my most recent game, Road Trip to the End of the World, is not about kissing at all. And yet, even in this case, I learned that kissability still played a part, and I'll get to that more later. So, what exactly does it mean for a character to be kissable? Kissability reflects the ability for a character to conjure desire. Whether that desire motivates you to push the character to success, watch them fail, or simply see their story play out to its conclusion, kissability is the key to a strong connection between player and character. I believe that the drive that pushes players to see a specific ending in a dating sim is no different than the desire that drives a player to see the ending of a story in a non-dating sim. It all comes down to curiosity, interest, and desire. It all comes down to kissability. So let's say you have a character in your game. You want to make sure they're kissable. What do? Well, kissability is such a broad concept that it can be difficult to know where to get started. That's why I created the Smoochability Matrix, patent pending, to provide a framework around the different ways that a character can embody this quality. Not every character is going to be kissable in the same way, nor should they be. So I've divided kissability roughly into 4 different categories represented by the 4 quadrants on the Smoochability Matrix. And the first quadrant is the peckable quadrant. These are characters you want to give a peck on the forehead or maybe the cheek. These characters are cute, sweet, what we in the biz call a cinnamon roll. Ideally, they spark warm, protective feelings from the player. And so this is the quadrant that my character Fishy from Road Trip to the End of the World falls into. Like I mentioned earlier, this game doesn't have romance in it. And so I don't necessarily want players to feel romantically about Fishy. She's 14 years old. She's an imaginary fish. However, because she plays a pivotal part in the story, and the very important plot points are not going to be resonant if players don't feel protective around her, kissability still matters. I equipped her with round shapes, large eyes, soft colors, all the visual things that are supposed to make a character cute. But what makes Fishy really peckable is her personality. She has strong passions, a sweet attitude, and a wide-eyed curiosity that makes you want to root for her. Plus, I think usually if a character makes you laugh, that gives you extra peckability points. Some other examples of peckable characters in games include Maya Fey from the Ace Attorney series, Yuna from Final Fantasy X and 10, and Scratch from Baldur's Gate 3. Children and animal characters will often fall into this character, even though they're not the only ones in it. And the second category is the smackable quadrant. Characters that are smackable develop a love-hate relationship with the player. They spark what I like to call like a picking at a mosquito bite type of unhealthy attachment. And in turn, that creates confrontational feelings in the player. And I am not ashamed to admit that this is, in fact, my favorite quadrant. A great way to think about smackable characters is to look at, I don't know, every single prosecutor in the Ace Attorney series. These characters are compelling because you want to see them flounder and fail, but in a loving way. You want to see them lose their composure, and the promise of that satisfaction pushes you to complete the game almost as much as the promise of the resolution of the mystery. Smackability at its finest. And here's another example from one of my games, which provides a slightly different angle. So this is Arturo from Kiss Off, and he is a smackable character who is not the haughty, arrogant type. He's actually very shy and introspective. But what makes him smackable is that he kind of like goes against you. He immediately refuses to play the dating game. He outright tells the protagonist, "Oh, like, don't pick me as your partner." And so during playtesting, when I asked the people who did choose him, like, why did you do that? A surprising number of people said, like, it's because he said not to. And I wanted to know what was up with him. And I feel like that's like a factor of smackability in that it conjures a sense of like it makes you a little bit of a contrarian. They create the friction that drives the conflict. So if you have an antagonistic character, you already have half the template. Okachigoro from Persona 5, Solus from Dragon Age, your rival from Pokemon Red and Blue. But the most important thing here to remember is to balance the love and hate. It's a pretty tricky balance, but once you get it right, when it works, there's nothing else like it. On a completely different note, the third category is the friendshipable quadrant. These characters hold aspirational positions, often have like some sort of power over the main character, are harboring a mystery or both, and they are meant to spark admiring feelings in the player, ideally. Regardless of the reason, there is something about them that draws you in, even though they don't feel as approachable as the characters in the first two categories. And yeah, my personal example of a friendshipable character is Volkazar, who you met earlier from Bard Harder. Being the final boss of a fantasy game grants you a level of power and respect. And whether you're fighting him or wooing him, there's a certain expectation of a challenge. So I really wanted to lean into that. Visually, design-wise, like I made him the tallest character in the game by far, and I saddled him with symbols of power like a crown, scepter, an impeccable sense of interior design. And yeah, I've got to say, like, skulls are very kissable, especially in the post-Undertale world. And more examples of friendshipable characters include Edelgard from Fire Emblem Three Houses, Samara from Mass Effect, and Princess Zelda from Twilight Princess specifically. We can talk about the other Zeldas afterward because they're not all the same. And just like there were a lot of mascots and companion characters in the peckable side, a lot of antagonists in the smackable side, the friendshipable characters, they often act as a sort of a North Star or like a goalpost for the main character to reach at some point, which obviously means that if these characters are not compelling, it can really weaken the game as a whole. Last but not least, the final category is the thirstable quadrant. I feel very strongly that the concept of kissability is not necessarily about hotness or sexuality, but here it is. And while like a quote-unquote attractive design is definitely important, thirstable characters should exude sensuality in the way that they act and speak as well. Out of my characters, Risk from Kiss Off is someone who falls into this category pretty easily. Design-wise, I was thinking a lot about how the other two characters, including Arturo, who you saw earlier, are more visibly alien, so I wanted a more recognizable humanoid features, and I made her fashionable and curvaceous, which I think helps. But more than that, what ultimately makes Risk thirstable is her confidence in her sexuality and also in her power in general. And I believe another hallmark of a thirstable character is agency, which means that, ironically, the fact that she herself thirsts makes her thirstable. And some more thirstable characters include everyone from Baldur's Gate 3. Now, I'm not here to tell you that these definitions are objective in any way. You may completely disagree with all of this. You may be angry. Thank you. And that's okay. Maybe you think Edelgard is smackable and not Frenchable. Maybe you think Solus doesn't belong anywhere on this chart. Valid opinions. And another thing you may have noticed is that very often characters fall into multiple quadrants. That's perfectly fine, even preferable. All I'm trying to share here is my personal classification that may help you find your own. With all of this in mind, and I'm sure a lot of you are doing this in your brains already, but a really helpful exercise I'd like to suggest is taking this matrix and plotting your favorite characters or your own characters onto it to figure out your very own personal smoochability profile. Learning your preferences and blind spots can help you dig into your specialties further or challenge yourself by balancing out the spread. And before we wrap up, I'd like to share one last super secret trick to making a kissable character. Doctors hate this one weird trick. And that is, make them unkissable in-game. Do you know how horny everyone gets for the characters in Hades, even though we were given the two hottest ones to kiss? Do you know how insane people get about the wizard in Stardew Valley? Really insane. In conclusion, the masses are hungry for kisses, and it is up to you to create a kissable future. Thank you so much for your time.
So we actually have like a full 7 minutes.
Amazing. Hi.
Hey, I don't want to immediately devolve into asking you where do you think certain characters should be? Take that question for if we have a lull. I'm curious at what point in the process, especially because you're making games where kissability is such an important theme, where in the process of generating a character do you think about how kissable they are?
Oh my God. I mean, I think from the very beginning, it's also interesting because like the first two games that I talked about was a collaboration with my partner Ethan. He did the writing, I did the art, but we would like talk a lot and brainstorm about what makes those characters interesting. I think it all happens simultaneously because the design will also often inform like certain personality traits, and we want to make sure it's like as cohesive and like I guess like deliciously non-cohesive also, which I think creates yeah, kissability.
If I'm not making a romance game,
Yeah.
what is the utility in me figuring out where my own NPCs and PCs fall under?
I think it is more for maybe like a more balanced set of characteristics, because even if you're not thinking romantically, the way that you're drawn to different characters, if it's only skewed in one direction, it can kind of start to feel a little stale. So I do think it has utility outside of romantic games. Hi, Jules.
Smackable character and disability you don't want. The extreme prosecutors is a great example, but some of them I just straight up don't like them and I don't want to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think there's a clear answer for that because it is so personal. I think if they feel smackable to you, that's great. Like if other people hate it, like fuck them, it doesn't matter. But yeah, the line is always going to be very thin. There are always going to be people who do not like characters that rub them the wrong way. But I don't know. I think that's fine. I think that's exciting. Yes.
Like player characters in on kissability favorite.
You know, that's a really interesting question. I think they do. I think it's worth plotting them, and I think it's actually interesting if they're kind of like if they maybe provide a contrast to like where the other characters in the game are hitting. I mean, I think it is more important when these are characters that like you as a player are interacting with, but it's still worth trying to plot them.
Where would you put weird little freaks in this category?
Weird little freaks. Oh my god. I mean, for me, I put a lot of them in the peckable category because it's like the cute aggression thing that they evoke. But like a lot of them saddle like smackable as well, probably. So it's more about like what their personality is like. Like are they like a little more annoying or are they a little bit more sweet?
You think that every character in narrative should have one of the four attributes of disability, or do you think it's valuable to have a like wildly undesirable in all aspects character?
Yeah. Well, it's hard, right? Because like what does it mean? Like I don't think just because they don't cleanly fit into any of these quadrants, they're like necessarily wildly undesirable. But I think what's fun about the exercise is finding where they could fit. Like if you had to like take a really undesirable character and be like, okay, like if I had to guess like what kind of desirability can I conjure from them? How can I like pull liquid from a rock or whatever that saying is? I think that might be a useful exercise. Oh, Alex.
Where would you plot characters that don't have personalities? Like, let me just say, the Slender Man. But where? It's to put it to a quadrant. So how does that work?
You know what? So while you were giving the talk, I was thinking about where Slenderman would be. Okay, and like everyone can disagree. I think Slenderman is Frenchable. Okay, all right, yeah. Because it's a sense of mystery. Yeah.
In general, like we all know, let's call them monster lovers. We'll see the quadrants entirely differently no matter what.
Absolutely.
The technical category to me is a little bit problematic potentially because you've got like children and animals in it.
Sure.
Have traits in common with some of the more reasonable characters who are adults. How do you write a good, hackable character without giving them sort of too many childlike attributes? That doesn't feel icky.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I was thinking a lot about this. Like, I really wanted all three of the non-thirstable category to be able to have like children characters and animal characters. I think the examples I provided reflect like me as a person and like my preferences. I think it would differ wildly in terms of like age and gender and like other kinds of factors if someone else were plotting their characters, their favorite characters. So it is definitely something to keep in mind. I don't have an answer, but I would like to keep thinking about it. Yeah.
Just like piggybacking off of the previous question, but so do you think every character will naturally fall into one of these categories because you're thinking of this as an exercise, or is this a more aspirational, like if you want to create a good set of balanced characters, you should strive to have one of them traits?
It depends on, I guess, what point in the process you're putting this into use. I think if you're using it for existing characters, it's just a fun exercise in terms of your own preferences, like your own a breadth in creating characters. If you're using it at the beginning of brainstorming, I do think it might be useful to like try to at least like do a little bit of a checkpoint to like create a variety of interesting characters. Oh yeah.
We have these four quadrants, but what are the attributes that we're measuring in quadrant time?
Good question. Yeah, I don't know. I just made the matrix. I said Smoochability Matrix, and I got very excited about the phrase and did not let it go even.